Hello and welcome to our podcast, Under the Banyan. I am your host Ritesh, and with us, we have a highly acclaimed writer, winner of the Yuva Sahitya Akademi Award. Scroll.in described him as a writer who appears rarely in the literary establishment. His voice as powerful, political, and urgent. He has written the book Adivasis Will Not Dance. Dr. Hansda Sowvendra Shekhar, welcome to our podcast, sir.
Thank you, Ritesh.
So, today's discussion would revolve around more about this book and your writing style. So, first thing that I wanted to ask you is when I did all the research about you, most of the interview, many places you are referred to as a Santhali writer. So, how do you react first to this tag of a Santhali writer?
I cringe at this tag because I'm not a Santhali writer. Santhali is a language, and it is the language of the community which is called Santhal. So, had I been called a Santhal writer, that would have been okay. But Santhali writer is not okay because I do not write in Santhali. So, I actually prefer just writer, no tags.
Yes, and even if people call you a Santhal writer, it is somewhat restricting because it's
Restricting.
not,
It's
I don't think
restricting.
all your works are not, you have written a children book as well.
I should this book is.
So, why do you think people who write about the marginalized or people who work for them in politics are usually tagged with their identities? Even if I talk about journalists who work with the grassroots and whose work is not considered mainstream, the so called mainstream, are often termed as activists. So, why do you think this happens?
Let me just, place my words in a proper way. I believe, not believe, I think that, as we live our lives, we tend to gather a lot of identities.
Hmm.
Right. For some of us, it becomes easy to, avoid being, pigeonholed
Hmm.
or labeled. For others, it is not so easy. So, all of us who are, I'm labeled as a Santhal writer and not just a writer, or writers and journalists who are labeled as activists. Perhaps it it is not easy for, or maybe to think in a positive way. Maybe we are being noticed a lot, so so people have difficulty putting us somewhere else, so they put us in something else. So, right.
So, when I read this book, one thing that really stuck out to me was that the use of adjective in this book was very less. And if I have to put it in another way, I would like to say that there was no sensationalism about any scene. Each scene had its own time to have its own impact. If I have to take an example, even a scene that involved sex had no sensationalism about it. There was no sensualization about it. So, was it intentional?
It wasn't intentional. It is just that I love, shorter descriptions.
Hmm.
It should be. Uh, I aim to create. When I write, I aim to, capture the attention of the reader,
Hmm.
because if you have, longer descriptions, you tend to lose the reader's attention.
Hmm.
I I have this feeling. This this is my opinion actually. And as for not being sensationalism, I'm thank you for saying it that way, because I remember when this book got into trouble in 2017, people were accusing me of sensationalism. So to hear it from someone who says that no, there is no sensationalism here, I'm really happy, really relieved. I feel vindicated actually. So thank you.
Like, if I have to give you one more example, there was a line that said that the mob came in the first story, they eat meat.
Yeah.
It was just plain simple, just said so. There was nothing more added. It just stopped at that line. The mob came.
The mob came, it stopped there because I hadn't seen the mob. It was all in my imagination, and I was expecting, the readers to, my words to create a picture of what happened in the reader's mind as they,
Mhm.
read the text. So that's why short.
Okay. All right. One more thing that I could notice in this book was like use of words that we do not know the meaning of, but and they were not explained as well. The meanings of the word were not explained. Basically, there were words used in Bengali, in Santhali, and none of the words were explained. What was the reason for that?
I wanted, okay, so the meanings of the words, like, there wasn't a glossary. That's what you want to say? Yeah.
Yes. And neither there was a footnote.
Where footnote?
So,
Footnotes make a book seem like an academic book or a non-fiction book. Even non-fiction books do not have footnotes. They have, all at the end of the book. So I wanted the words to actually, like, I wanted the reader to grasp the words. And they could do it if they could understand what that particular word is. So I think I was cautious enough to, build my other words around in such a way that they could, explain what those vernacular or bhasha words were. So,
like in this book, most of the stories, all the stories, in fact, are very political. They have a layered politics around it.
yeah.
All the stories. Until on the last story, you're basically hitting the nail on the head. You're very direct in the last story. So, do you think that people who write, they have certain, or if I talk not only writing, any art form, do you think art form can be relevant and apolitical at the same time? If they're not talking about politics at all, and here I'm definitely not talking about the electoral politics. I'm saying they do not have a political undertone at all. Do you think they can still be relevant? Do you consider?
See, relevance is relative. What is relevant to you won't be won't be relevant to me. What is relevant to me might not be relevant to you.
Okay.
So, relevance is what purpose a work serves. I think that is its relevance. So, if the purpose of a work is to enlighten people, then that is its relevance. So, that work can be political in tone. If the purpose of a work is to entertain people, then perhaps it will, appeal to, the popular taste. It might not be political, but it is relevant in one way. So everything is relevant if they serve a particular purpose. So
The relevance in the sense, if I like you have like I have a like you said, it is very respective. It is subjective thing.
yeah,
So like I have for me, relevance means something which is done for which will have an impact if I have read that particular thing. Before I read that thing and after I read that thing, there will be some difference in me. There will be some amount of difference in me, and the work will stay on for longer with me. And it is not like I watched a movie of Salman Khan and he came out and I forgot. When I was there, I was euphoric a lot, and I came out and I forgot about it. I was
I think some of Salman Khan's works are also political. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Mm. So relevance, according to me, how do you see, and what are few relevant works or which are respectively subjectively relevant to you and writers or people who have done some work in this area which you thought were relevant?
I think that depends. That actually depends. You want me to give examples of certain works?
Certain, yeah, sure.
I cannot remember. Or maybe I remember, but I don't want to name those. But repeat your question.
So, like, I wanted to ask you works of art, literature, movies, or any kind of artist work that you think is relevant according to you, and that there are works that should be followed, like people or their work should be followed.
Oh God, I recently translated Mr. Manoj Dupla's book. It was a Hindi novel, Kale Adhyay, which I translated into English as I Named My Sister Silence. It was my first published work of translation. Okay. So, I I think that work was relevant, and that is the reason why it clicked with me, why I loved it so much that I wanted to translate it immediately. So, yeah, I can name that one book as an example of relevant work.
Okay. And do you have any role models
A lot.
of
A lot.
in writing?
A lot. A lot.
Hmm.
There was a time when I used to dream of writing a huge book like Manju Kapoor does. Her first book was Difficult Daughters, a long, family story. Then I always have a copy of Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things and Jhumpa Lahiri's Interpreter of Maladies with me. They're on my Kindle, and I have several copies of those. Because they are like textbooks. Yeah. So and I was heavily into Jane Austen when I was in school, even though I could not understand a lot of words that she wrote, which I understood later on as I grew up. And I think Austen's stories can be set anywhere, like Sense and Sensibility. It was, uh, it also worked well as a film starring, a Tamil film starring Aishwarya Rai and Tabu. And yeah, so these are certain works which like affected me. Yeah.
Mm. Before this, while we were talking about why do people write?
Yeah, we were talking about why do people write, and
I wanted to ask you, why do you write? What was the reason you wrote for the first time, and what is the reason
yeah,
now?
this question, why do people write? Like we had this conversation before, it can be divided into two phases, like why a person starts writing and why a person continues to write. So now my answer could be like why I'm continuing to write is, yeah, because I have stories to tell, because there are words in my mind and I want to let it all out. But why I began writing, that has a very, like a selfish kind of a reason. I love the touch of books, you know, and I have always felt that one day I will write a book and then it will have my name on its cover and it will have a beautiful cover design and the barcode at the back cover. So that that was what actually it drove me to not write a book, but to write.
Hmm.
My first story, my first work was published when I was 15 years old. So when you are 15, all these things, the feel of books, if you love books, that is, the feel of books and the smell of books and the overall look of a book, it appeals a lot to you. And I was 15 years old in 1998, and we did not have, the internet. I mean, we had internet, means we did not have internet in my place, right? So books were all I had, right?
Mhm.
So to one day have a book and have my name printed on its cover, and it seemed like an achievement. So that was why I felt that maybe one day I will write a book. But I published my first book when I was in 2014. So I was 31 years old. So by that time, my reason for writings and all had changed, but not very much. When my first book came out, I was still that 15-year-old who thought of it as a huge achievement, and I was, very happy. Very happy.
So when that first book happened, did after that the reason change a lot?
After that, somewhat it changed. But after that reason changed, and now I write because I have something to write and I have stories to tell, which I think that yes, must be told. But even now, when I finish writing something, like I'm heavily into writing long forms now. I'm enjoying writing long forms and essays. So whenever I finish writing an essay or any work, I feel very nice. Like first 1000 words done, I'm like, wow, I've achieved something. So that happiness, that basic reason why you write,
Mm.
to see your name on a book and the happiness that you feel that, you know, there are flowers blooming inside you then. So that feeling, it's still there. It's still there.
Like we uh, we both come from Jharkhand,
Yeah.
and in Jharkhand, thinking of writing a book, we do not have writers around us to like. We do not. Art is not something a blooming field in Jharkhand.
Yeah.
We do not know how to get something published. I don't think, and definitely you at that particular age, like in 15, earlier when papers you used to have a huge column about stories published in
Yeah.
but that also has slowly died down.
Yeah, that's right down.
So how do people from our place can come forward and get a book published? What were your challenges to get your first book published?
Uh, I think for us, for me as well, writing and you know, having it, you know, having it read by someone and then to get a feedback on it, that itself was a huge challenge. Yeah. But I am lucky that Facebook happened then, and I found some really good friends there, friends who are writing, friends I am still friends with, and I have also mentioned two of those friends in the acknowledgements page of my first book. One is Sumana Roy, another is Madhulika Riddle. Both of them well-known writers. So I was fortunate to find friends like this, people like this online. So that was, I think, one thing Facebook did well, because now Facebook is all about reels and all. But in 2010, 2011, Facebook was really, really useful. Social media was, I think, it was just growing. Now it has become something else. So I was lucky to find friends like them. And there was an online community of writers on Facebook called Asia Writes. So they had put up a post uh, about submissions to an erotic anthology, to which I had submitted a story and it got selected. The anthology was edited by Shiba Karim. It was published by Westland, Tranquoba Press. Uh, and the book, it came out in 2012 or 2013, and I think 2012. So, platforms like these, I was helped by both. I cannot ever, like, not acknowledge these. Right. So I think Facebook happened at the right time. But of course, from, you know, if you come from a place where, uh, like you said, there's no culture of, like, there is a culture of writing. I won't say there isn't a culture of writing, there isn't a culture of arts, because folk arts are there in Jharkhand.
Yes.
Yes, this book publishing thing is not there. So, yes, we might find it difficult. But now I think it has become more democratic. Internet has made the world a more democratic space.
But don't you think, like, earlier when there was a small group of people, like people who are into movies now, and who are not from that background, directors, screenwriters, when Facebook was a new thing, when Twitter was a new thing, it gave them a chance to connect with people.
Yeah,
Now,
it gives you a chance to connect with
now social media does not give you any chance to connect.
It gives you a chance to fight with people.
If
Fighting is also connection in one way.
so earlier, just at the advent of these social media, people had that opportunity. Now, when we talk about it has become more democratic, I think way you can reach at that particular point where there are people who are going to give you a chance first. Has that become relatively easier to reach at the door?
Easier to because you are like more exposed to information. Right. But of course, how you use that information, that is up to you. So, yeah.
In many writings, especially about the marginalized, there is a feeling of pity. Sometimes it feels as if the writer is observing things from a pedestal. In this book, I never felt anything of that sort.
Actually, a number of stories in this collection, they are from my own experiences. Right. Like, there is this story called Eating with the Enemy, which is set in the township of an industrial an industrial township. Right. So I have grown up in an industrial township. I have grown up in a place called Mobhandar, where you have the copper mines, copper factory of the Hindustan Copper Limited. The mines were in Masabani. I think they have closed down now. I'm not really, I'm not updated with the recent things, but the factory is still there, and that was where I grew up. Right. My parents used to work in the company. My mom, she used to work in the hospital there. My dad used to work in the factory. So the incidents which I have mentioned in that story, eating with the enemy, the bungalow, the garden in the front, a quarter for
Outhouse.
the outhouse, right? So those are things which I have lived and experienced, right? So they came just like I had lived those. I did not have to, like make a research on it, a separate research or something. They were already there in my mind. So,
One thing that I also felt when I was reading this book, I don't know how intentional this was. When you were telling the stories of people who are marginalized, I couldn't help but notice that the stories form a arc, a complete arc, where people coming from different economic backgrounds or economic classes are marginalized in different ways, but everyone is marginalized. So I wanted to understand, was this intentional? Like a person who is living in a bungalow is rich and everything. He is marginalized in the things they are going to eat.
yeah,
How?
it wasn't intentional. I think that's a part of reality. Like, you may have a lot of money, but perhaps you will not belong to the right community. You may belong to a powerful community, but perhaps you do not have, you know, you're lacking in the capital in some way. Like, uh, you are losing if you are losing in money capital, you are gaining it in your social capital. So somewhere things are getting balanced.
I want to slightly discuss about the ban of this book. Like, this book was earlier banned, and it was, first of all, it was not banned earlier. Like, first there was some protest from people from your own community,
Yeah.
and people. It was not banned by jamindars or corporates. Not done by that. It was done from people, and obviously you were removed from your own job.
Yeah, not as a remote,
Suspended from your job. Yes. So first of all, what was your initial reaction to it? Obviously, you would have been distorted, but in the long run, does it increase the self censorship? Because you have a job on the line as well.
it does. Even in my job, I was in a different place at that time, and I'm in a different place right now. And that time, mm, I was just a worker in a hospital, not a hospital, a health center. Right. That was in Pakur when all these things happened. So I only had one kind of what you call it, a perspective, the perspective of someone who is down there. So I was able to I took it as a prerogative to express myself freely and use the freedom that I have, and you know okay. Uh then the ban happened, which lasted like August, September, up to November, December, 4 months. Right. However, my suspension, it lasted for like almost 12 months. Right. So of course I felt very negative about it, and I was feeling helpless. Like, what will I do now? Take it. I had this feeling inside me that I haven't done anything wrong, so nothing bad can happen to me. But how long will this bad phase last? So that apprehension was there in my mind. Okay, so all that is done. My book was unbanned, and then I was reinstated into my job. And then I was transferred from Pakur to this place called Chandel, where I'm staying right now. And now my situation is a bit different at work. Now I am the head of the health center where I'm working. And now I have found a different perspective. Right. So earlier I was on that side of the table. Now I am on this side of the table. And the position which I'm having right now on this side of the table, from that place, I can see from this side of the table, and I can also, cross over to that side of the table. So, I mean, both those views are open to me. Earlier, which was just one view, now it is a number of views. Okay. So even that restricts my work right now. Earlier, which I used to, see as problems, and I used to mention them as problems. From this position, I have this feeling that perhaps I'm in a place where I can solve those problems. So is it fair to write about problems when your duty should be to solve the problems? So this restricts my writing right now. I cannot write a book like this anymore. Right. And also there is this, self-censorship thing. Yes, I may not really admit it, but or acknowledge it, but self-censorship is happening. Now I think a lot before putting words on paper.
Okay.
So these are the changes that have happened.
All right. So when you talk about self-censorship, like it,
Hmm.
it is very difficult for us to realize that self-censorship has happened. Like, how did you come to that realization? Like, were you writing something? Does it happen with you more often? Like, everyone
It
self-censors.
happens. I mean, when you are self-censoring yourself, you are doing it because you have realized it. It isn't like you are deleting this word and you do not ask yourself why have I deleted this.
Hmm.
Right. For a writer, editing is very difficult.
Hmm.
That is why I admire the role of editors. I admire the role of readers. I admire the role of, friends who read your work and then give an opinion on it. Because as a writer, it is very difficult to, कोई भी काट छाट कर लेना from your work. ठीक है? So when you are actually doing that काट छाट, when you are actually deleting words from your uh, work,
Hmm.
you 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 actually ask yourself, why am I deleting this?
Hmm.
Is it because I want to make it a more crisper, more exciting, more, like engaging work? Or am I deleting these words because I do not want to offend other people's feelings if they happen to read those words? So it is never like you don't realize it. You realize it all the time, you realize it.
Hmm.
That's
One more thing in this particular book is when a person reads this book, it I got an idea. Like, this book comes from your personal life. Most of the things that you are writing in this book, you have seen those things. It is very clear while reading this book only. How much of this book do you think is, to that extent, can I call it, how much of this book is autobiographical in that sense? Like, how much of fiction have you added into it? And if not, then why didn't you call it a autobiography in that sense?
see, it is not exactly autobiographical because I have written about things which I've seen happening, but they've happened to other people, not to me. I was just an observer.
Okay.
Right. So in that way, it is not autobiographical.
Hmm.
Could have been memoir, right?
Hmm.
But even if you write a memoir, you need a lot of information.
Hmm.
You just cannot write a non-fiction without actually knowing things. But even in fiction, you have to know things.
Hmm.
But in fiction, you have the freedom of, imagination.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
So I took I took elements from real life, other people's life, and then I added a bit of my imagination to it. So that is why fiction
Alright.
almost appropriate.
And I also wanted to uh, ask you this: keep while this book is a great read. First of all, this book,
Huh?
it was a it was a brilliant read. This book, and every story felt personal. Most of the stories in this book were written as earlier were published somewhere
Elsewhere, yeah.
elsewhere, right? Like, for the one, like,
There were only two books which were added. Two stories that Teddy added to school. One was November is the month of migrations, and another one is Getting Even. So those were the only two stories which I wrote, the new unpublished stories. But all.
but the earlier stories that were published, they were not in the same shape. They were not at all in the same shape.
In fact, the title story, The Adivasi Will Not Dance, in its first version, in its actual published version, it was called Adivasis Will Not Dance, and it was published right here in Bhubaneswar. You know, Dhole Review. It was in Dhole Line magazine. Yes. Now it is. It has. I'm not sure Dhole Review is there or not, but now it has become publishing house. Dhole Books. Manu Dash. He started the that publishing house, as well as that online magazine. And that was where Adivasi Will Not Dance was first published.
Okay.
So this book has a lot of Odisha connections as well.
So, so when you're shaping those writings, like uh, when you're shaping those writings for this particular book, what was your thought? Like, then you knew that I'm going to take. How many stories were you originally planning to be in this book? Were there
A decent number, not any fixed number, but a decent number.
more than what is there?
There were 8 stories. Like, come on, let me tell you. So I only had 8 stories ready. Date Meet, which first came in
Lilith.
Lalit. Sons, which came in this book, which just a moment, I'm forgetting the names as well. Northeast Review. November is a month. It's a new story. Getting Even is a new story. Eating with the Enemy, I think it came in 4 Quarters Journal. Blue Baby, it came in the Statesman, and its original title was Color Pink. Basochi, it came in Indian Literature, Desire, Divination, Death, Indian Literature, Merely a Whole, and again 4 Quarters Magazine, Adivasi Will Not Dance, and Dolly Review. Right. So I already had 8, and then we decided that maybe it needs some more pages. And I was working on those 2 stories. November is the month of migrations, and Getting Even. Yeah, that's how
Like when I read that story, it felt more like a when it was originally published. It felt more like a report. No.
Okay.
Like they especially they eat meat. It felt more like a report, not like a.
Yeah.
The changes in that book make it. They make sure that it is going to be written in a book. It does not sound like a report.
Yeah. Look, They Eat Meat wasn't it? It wasn't actually like this book. It wasn't intended to be a book. It the thing is the team which brought me into publishing. My publisher Ravi Singh, editor Anurag Basnet. We worked on The Mysterious Element of Rupi Baskey, my first novel, and they were at Aleph at that time.
The book for which you got the
Sahitya
Sahitya
Akademi, yeah.
Yes.
And then Ravi, he quit Aleph and he started speaking Tiger. And along with him, Anurag also came. And then they asked me if I want to, if I have a book, if I want to join them. And I was like, yeah, why not? They are my team. So, and that was when, the idea for a short story collection came. And I mentioned that I have these short stories, 8 short stories, which have been published so far. Maybe we can have a collection. That was how this book was born. This was not supposed to happen. I mean,
Thankfully, it happened.
Thankfully, it happened. Yeah.
Alright. So I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One is, first of all, why the title? Because the title speaks a lot.
Actually, They Eat Meat was supposed to be. No. We were considering They Eat Meat as well to be the title story. But of course, the title is, powerful.
Much more powerful.
Much more powerful. So that is why this was taken as a title story.
Okay. For this particular title, it speaks a lot.
It speaks a lot. It's like what you call it. It's like refusal to cow down to authority and power. So, but of course, this won't happen again because I have seen both sides of the
Definitely.
connection. So
I agree. So ending this, I wanted to ask you, if you have to recommend one thing, a movie, a series, a book, a report, anything of that kind.
I have come fully prepared for this question.
Oh.
So I'm heavily into this one now. Like I just loved Bad Sisters on Apple TV Plus. Amazing. Okay, wait, and I am in season 2. Episode 6 has just happened. I'm waiting for episode 7, which will come out next Wednesday. And as for books, I loved this one. The book which won the book of this year, Orbital by Samantha Harvey. It is such an amazing book. it makes you feel like you are so small, and there are worlds that you do not know and do not and you can never understand. And you know what attracted me to the book was uh, on that cover copy, the synopsis was like there are these astronauts who are in a space station, and they receive a news that one of the astronauts' mother, she has died, and they still have like 1 month to go before they can return to Earth. So, and so that astronaut whose mother has died, she cannot immediately return to Earth. So, this was such a deeply moving and haunting situation. So that was what made me pick up this book. And wait. Then I'm loving Claire Keegan's works. I read The Forester's Daughter and Foster, and there's another book I read and which I enjoyed. Not exactly enjoyed it. It um it you know it it gave me a new insight. The book is Dancing on a Turtle's Back: Stories of Nishnaabeg, Recreation, Resurgence, and a New Emergence, by Leanne Bitasamasaki Simpson. And Leanne Simpson, she's actually uh, a first people, a first, uh, a member of the first people from North America.
Hmm.
And in this book, Dancing on a Turtle's Back, she has written about the creation stories of her people. So she mentions that the first people there in North America, they have the idea that the earth, it rests on the back of a tortoise.
Hmm.
And when I read that, I was like amazed, because even among the Santals, the creations in the Santhal creation stories too, the earth is supposed to rest on the back of a tortoise. So we Santals are here somewhere in Asia and they are there in North America. How did our, like, what do you call it? How did our creation stories they match?
They match.
Okay, I wrote an essay about this. I told you I'm enjoying writing essays, which came in, I think, the May 2024 issue of the Caravan magazine. And then I recently rediscovered Kureli Manikavel, amazing writer. Some reader on the internet, they commented, Kureli Manikavel's mind must be a very, like an exciting place. And I translated one of her stories, Pawai, which is from her collection Insects Are Just Like You and Me Except They Have Wings. I translated that story into Hindi. And it was published in One Mali Patrika. But I don't know why they mentioned the story to be a Tamil story, but actually it was an English story. So this one I did. Then there is Kureli Manikavel is published by Blaft Publications, Chennai based Blaft Publications. An outrageous publishing house, because they publish outrageous books. They published another book called Sin is a Puppy That Follows You Home, by Balaraba Ramat Yakubu. It is a Hausa book translated into English by Aliyu Kamal. This is just like, a film, full of masala and full of family intrigue. And then I read Crooked Seeds by Karen Jennings. I love this book. Then, just a moment. I read Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Very, very clever book. And then Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, translated by Elizabeth Jacket. Amazing book set in Palestine. Then yeah, these are the books which I can mention this year.
Definitely, you have
And just a moment. There are other books to which I read in 2023. You want to know about them? Surely. So I'm not finding those, what you call it, that particular note. Okay, maybe we'll talk about them some other time. Surely. So,
Thank you so much, sir, for doing this podcast. It was lovely talking to you. I hope our listeners will gain something from it. Thank you so much.
thank you, Ritesh.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. See you in the next episode of Under the Banyan with another interesting guest and leaving you with some beautiful lines from a great song.
रीत जगत की ऐसी है, हर एक सुबह की शाम हुई। तू कौन है, तेरा नाम है क्या? सीता भी यहाँ बदनाम हुई। फिर क्यों संसार की बातों से भीग गए तेरे नैना?